as people, we're nomadic and we move around and we go to places we enjoy, and that's really the impetus to travel in general. And I think as we've seen that influx in a place like Bend finally go over 100,000 people, new residents, and obviously over the last 2 years with the pandemic, there's been a huge influx of new residents. I think there's a when you grow at that rate, there's a.
Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. We're here again in another conversation of Let's Talk Tourism, and now I have the pleasure of speaking with Kevney. He is the president and CEO of Visit Bend, an organization that is helping a lot of the community of Bend organize its tourism goals and perspectives. So it's going to be a good conversation just to understand a little bit about what is Bend doing correctly, how we got to that place as well, and also how it's preparing for the future and topics relating to marketing and things of that nature. So it's going to be a really dense conversation. And thank you, Kevney, for your time.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, man. And tell us a little bit about your background. Like how do you got into Visit Bend, how you got and scaled up, please.
Yeah. I'm sort of an interesting story. I'm not the classic went to college for tourism, didn't study tourism, but grew up in Michigan and ended up graduating from college, became a fly fishing guide, lived in Montana for a while, short stint in California, back to Wyoming, ended up in Bend in 2007. And I was actually running the Orvis store, fly fishing industry at the time, and it was great, and I loved it. But I was looking for a little more stability, and joined Visit Bend as the director of sales then, and was really tasked with bringing a lot of national championship bike races, trail running, all sorts of things to the community. And then 2016 was given the opportunity to take over as the president CEO, and that's been the last 6 or 7 years, and it's been an amazing journey, but also one where I've been able to see this community grow and evolve and how tourism's played out in this community. It's been a really fun ride.
That's interesting, man. And it's good that you mentioned that you didn't study for this career, but in some ways you got into this. Huh?
Yeah.
So what do you think is like let's start out with the history a little bit. Yeah. What differences do you notice back then when you started as director of sales? And now in this 2022, what's the main differences that you see?
Yeah, I think, back then, Bend was sort of up and coming. We used to talk about this goal of making Bend a one-word town. You used to have to qualify Bend and say it's Bend, Oregon. People would say, well, are you talking about South Bend, Indiana? Are you talking about what Bend are you talking about? And so back then, tourism, it was growing, it was happening, but it wasn't, or at least the community wasn't as recognized as it is today. So back then, it was a lot of marketing efforts. Our sales efforts were really strong, trying to bring huge group business to town. And then I would say 2013, 14, coming out of that housing recession, the economy recovered, things were going well. And the community sort of said, do we need to be marketing this town the way we are? Do we need to be driving tourism the way we are? And what is a healthy level? What is a sustainable level of tourism? And I would say that sort of 2014, 15, we cut back on our sales efforts, recognized that maybe the community didn't want roads closed down for days at a time, and really started also thinking about seasonality. Summer was booming, winter needed some help. And so we really changed strategies, and I would say that's still the case today, where the community sees value in the industry, but really appreciates a more thoughtful approach to how we market, when we market, and the demographics we're going after, and all those things that are marketing related.
Yes, it's interesting that you said that the community in itself has shifted, because when now the brand of Bend, I've seen people from different parts of the world, so that's a good sign that it's on the map as a tourism destination. And you have seen that also recently in this couple of years, how a lot of people visited Bend or Portland or Oregon in itself. And now they see that effort, and maybe it's too much. So that's something that you mentioned as well. That's pretty interesting, you know?
Yeah.
So now in the current sense of what Bend is currently doing, what do you think is, how do you say it? What do you think is the way that this city is trying to implement itself and sustain itself as as a tourism spot? What is it doing currently?
Yeah. I think, we've really changed, if we are communicating in the summer months, it's a lot about responsible recreation. It's a lot about, if you are going to enjoy this destination, what are the things we need to know? And there's a lot of them. Fire bans are in place, and asking visitors if you're going to go camping, there's fire bans, and we've seen fires start from accidents. And then on the flip side, in winter months, our hotel occupancy drops to 45 to 50%, and we do need a more consistent marketing message where we are encouraging people to come, because local businesses need that bump. So it's really a sort of a tale of two seasons, if you will, where in the winter months we're more of a traditional marketing organization, and during those summer months it's almost like we're more of a conservation sort of sustainability organization. And I would say that's been it's been a challenge, but also exactly what this community's needed. And I think moving forward, there's definitely a sense and a respect from the community that tourism is a good, viable industry in this community that brings money in, and those dollars are repurposed to the benefit of the community. The struggle is how much, and where do you find that balance? And I think we see that the most in our natural landscapes, where that's really the calling card of a place like Bend. We don't have we're not Las Vegas, where we have a ton of indoor options and everybody's coming here for water parks or things like that. You're coming here to be on our trails. You're coming here to ski our ski hills. So if we're not taking care of those things, I have concerns about, is the industry sustainable long term? But I think that's been a huge focus of Visit Bend, is making sure we're reinvesting in those assets to make sure that in 10, 15 years, going for a mountain bike ride is still as enjoyable as it is today.
Yes, and that's a very good point. And the thing is that before we talked, we started this recording, you were mentioning how the city of Visit Bend coordinates with the city of Bend, and then city of Bend coordinates with the rest of the departments that make up the city as well. So that is, do you see that coordination happening in the future, or how do you see that coordination between all those sectors possible? Because it's very complex in nature.
Yeah, and I think this is something we can all be better at. I think Visit Bend does a good job of working with the Forest Service and the City of Bend and a lot of the local organizations. It could be Central Oregon Trail Alliance or the Deschutes Trails Coalition, and making sure that our efforts are in line with their efforts. But I do think that as we move forward, there could be better coordination between even the City of Bend and Visit Redmond, for example, or the city and the county. Because at the end of the day, a visitor to Bend is going out to the Three Sisters Wilderness, which is outside the city limits of Bend. And we have an obligation to make sure we understand that. And I think the more we can come together for a collective vision for where we want the region to look like in 20 to 30 years, the more we're going to benefit. And I think right now we're going in that direction, but I think we could definitely be better.
Yes, there's a lot of ideas between each people, and then conflicts of interest, and then things of that nature happens. I wanted to ask you, what do you think the community is responding to this recent emergence of new people who were tourists back then? And now when the pandemic, when COVID hit, they saw that they could become residents now in a better, more tranquil spot, including myself, because I'm part of that group. So what do you think the people of Bend and even the Central Oregon region can
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You hit the nail on the head. I'm part of that. I moved here 16, 17 years ago, and even somebody who moved here 40 years ago or is second generation. I mean, this is, as people, we're nomadic, and we move around and we go to places we enjoy, and that's really the impetus to travel in general. And I think as we've seen that influx in a place like Bend finally go over 100,000 people, new residents, and obviously over the last 2 years with the pandemic, there's been a huge influx of new residents. I think there's when you grow at that rate, we lose our sense of balance. And that's the best way I can sum it up. I think we will come back together and understand what that new norm feels like. But right now, it definitely feels busy. Our trailheads are busier. And I think the thing that we all sort of ask of each other is that we care about this place. Whether you're a new resident, whether you're a visitor, whether you've lived here your entire life, there's an obligation to treasure this place and take care of it. And I think that's, again, we're sort of in this state of flux. But I think that will come back as things sort of slow down and we get back to an understanding of how many people are coming. I think tying that to the tourism side, that's something we aim for. The last few years you've seen rapid growth. During the pandemic, people couldn't travel internationally, and Bend was this huge outlet. And now coming out of the pandemic, there is a little bit more travel internationally. You also have things like gas prices keeping people from traveling. And so
Of course.
we're seeing actually a little bit of stability and not the rate of growth in tourism we had been seeing through the pandemic. That feels good to me. If we can get back to a place where those industry metrics are growing at 2, 3, 4% a year, that's a lot easier to manage than 10, 15% rates of growth. So
Exactly.
the change has been difficult, and I think the quote unquote locals struggle with that. But at the end of the day, they
how
were
it is.
also in those shoes at one point. So
Yeah.
that perspective matters, and I think most people understand that.
That's good. That's good that you mentioned it, because a lot of people would focus on creating even more tension. The locals versus the tourists versus the residents. So it's good that you see it that way. It's not a team by team or a tribal effort.
Yeah.
It's just focusing on what's more important, which is the landscape in itself. Huh?
Yeah, and we really, I think, have changed our mentality and think about everything we do from the lens of not only how does it benefit a visitor, but how does it benefit a local community member. So what are those efforts doing? And before we jump down this, I mentioned the Bend Sustainability Fund, which is a grant program that we use to reinvest into things like trailheads or other tourism-related facilities. And that program is really designed to make sure that if we are investing in a facility, there's also a benefit to the local community as well. And so again, to your point, we have to stop siloing, if you're a local or you're a visitor. We are all visitors to this place at some point, and the more we can understand that and just take a step back and respect how lucky we are, I think the future is a lot brighter.
We're a visitor on Earth, huh? You can say.
Yeah.
Even it's also. You mentioned right now a good point. You beat me to it. What do you think that Visit Bend has contributed the most to the city of Bend? Because like we mentioned before the conversation, that tourism is a good industry, but it becomes too extractive, and it doesn't distribute it equally, and even for things that benefit the whole community, not just the site. Huh?
Right.
So you mentioned a little bit about that trust. Is there anything else that Visit Bend has contributed to make that development sustainable?
Yeah, I think we're not perfect, but I think that what's happened over the last, I'm going to say 3 years, and honestly, the pandemic gave us this opportunity. Going into the pandemic, every metric you read in tourism was around economic development. How much money are you making? What's the revenue and the upside to that industry from a dollars and cents standpoint? And I think we also recognized through the pandemic that we were taking advantage of a labor market and maybe not paying people what they're worth, and we didn't have the best working conditions, and those people felt that, and they jumped ship to other industries. And so we came out of the pandemic short-staffed, people eager to travel, asking people to do 80-hour work weeks, and that's just not tenable. And so I think that as an organization, whether it's the Bend Sustainability Fund that's reinvesting into the community and projects like Tumalo Falls or Big Sky Bike Park, or even things further from town where there are new mountain bike trails sort of on BLM land on the outskirts. We also recently hired a workforce development director who, to my knowledge, is the first time somebody's been hired in that space. And their job is really tasked with making sure the employment practices of people in this industry are first class and they're industry leading, and that we're thinking about what the stability of schedules look like. I mean, the most basic thing for somebody to wake up in the morning and understand, I'm going to go to work from 9 to 5. That's not our history. And so I think there's so much we have to do, and there is so much money flowing through the industry that taking a hard look about where that money is ending up. And is it fair to ask people in this industry to potentially live in poverty? And you see this throughout the world where you have gated resorts surrounded by people living in less ideal living conditions. And I think I think we're trying, and again, we're not perfect, but there's progress, and I think that is something we really need to think about if we want these industries to thrive and we want these communities to support them.
Especially with the growth that you guys are having. I've seen very little. I've investigated very little, but real estate has become a booming market, and now they're I think, what was it, the land, Skyland or Sky, like a big property, like a reserve of
maybe Skyline Forest.
Skyline, I think it was Skyline.
Yeah.
They're debating, or the thing is that the company sold it, or is about to sell it.
Yeah.
So whoever takes it, they can do whatever they want. Huh?
Yeah.
So I've heard even the community are trying to see if there's public forms of making it a national forest or reserve or something of that nature.
Yep.
So that is a good thing that you're trying to balance. I don't know if you guys are participating in that in some way.
Yeah.
But property is something that I see is going to be a big problem. As well.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you talk about Skyline Forest, and we have been very involved in that project. And, we supported the permit system in Three Sisters Wilderness, for example, and people sort of said, well, why wouldn't a tourism industry support limiting access? And at the end of the day, it's about preservation. It's about making sure that in 15 years we can still have a wildlife experience in our wilderness areas. I feel the same about Skyline Forest. There are very few opportunities left in the state of Oregon to grab 34,000 acres and put it into the public hands for generations to come.
Exactly.
And that's not even the start of it. We talk about climate change, and we talk about the value of healthy forest and carbon sinks, and I think that piece of property, if in 10, 15 years you and I are looking to the west and we see it dotted with mansions and home sites and lights, I think that's a miss for this community. And I think I'm okay saying that, because I think, well, we might want to continue this economic growth rate. It's just not, this community can't handle that. Water, I mean, all the natural resources we depend on. So it's really exciting to see the community take a hard look, and then even within the city of Bend, a lot more focus on dense housing, more urban focus on that development, and that reduces lane miles traveled. All the other elements we know are potential complicating factors to climate change. So
the thing is that amazes me of Bend is that you got it right now. Like, even if you didn't want to ride your car, there's so many. The city is structured for bike lanes. So that is something that hopefully you guys get right as well. Like how you guys are going to prepare for urban planning as well, urban zoning and all that territory, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see in the future.
Especially things like shared transportation. I mean, that's one area where I think we're not super strong. We're very dependent on cars, but I think that's an initiative that the community cares about. And if we can find a better way to have better bus systems or even better bike lanes where it's safer to commute, I think it'll be great to see those transformations happen. And it seems like the community is motivated to do that.
Yes, and as technology evolves, they could become electric or things of that nature will make it a little bit less impact. Now I wanted to focus a little bit on marketing. Is the city of Bend or Visit Bend, is it preparing its marketing for that vision that you say, or the certain aspects of making a union between tourists, residents, and locals? And also making it sustainable, or how is this organization preparing its marketing?
Yeah, again, it's sort of we have those 2 seasons I alluded to. And so in the summer, we spend a lot of time working with groups like Leave No Trace and making sure that, those best practices about recreating responsibly is sort of the forefront of our messaging. We've been doing a lot of work with influencers, which is sort of an up-and-coming marketing trend, but really making sure that we are looking at racial diversity within that marketing, or gender identity within that marketing, and making sure we're a much more welcoming destination through their eyes and through our marketing. We see that as sort of a weak spot right now. So there's lots of different issues our marketing is focused on. I think in the winter months we go back to that more traditional, families coming to ski because there is a need to sort of boost the economy during those times of the year. But it is we consult with people when we build marketing plans and actual creative to make sure that that marketing is reflective of the community. And I think this is one thing people miss. You know, they think we sit in this office and we just do whatever we think's best, but there's a lot of consulting that goes on to make sure that our marketing is reflective of the community we desire to become. And it's important, you know, and so I think it's there's a lot of effort is all I can say. And again, I will be very clear, we are not perfect. We don't nail it all the time, but there's definitely an effort to make sure that our marketing plans, where we're putting that media, what the vision of that marketing is all in alignment with the community's values.
That's good. You mentioned one important thing, that is being specific to the community that you want to become. Also, that makes the essence for people who would like to visit.
Yep.
Because you cannot bring everybody.
Yep.
So that's good that you guys are focusing on what kind of tourists you want.
Yep. Yep.
Even the values, culture, even capital. You know,
Yep.
how much investment they are willing to do.
Yep.
So it's good that you are focusing your marketing on that.
Yeah. I'll give you one really pinpoint example. 5 years ago, I was the one saying, you know, this is what our community makeup is, and this is what our marketing should look like. And I had it 180 degrees wrong, and I own that, you know. But the reality was, we went and said, we're marketing in Seattle and Portland and the Bay Area. And those destinations are all roughly 25% racially diverse. So why are we marketing a vision of what Bend is today when we're marketing to communities that are something completely different? And so we just flipped it on our head and started establishing goals, like our marketing should reflect 25 to 50% racial diversity. You know, like we need to be thinking opposite of what we historically have thought, and it's been a game changer. You know, but again, I own my shortcomings in that, and it's something I think we all need to challenge ourselves with, because if you're marketing in a market like Seattle, who are you marketing to, and what is that community's makeup? It's been super healthy.
Yes, and the thing with marketing, it's very complex. You know, it's very complex. A lot of pieces, especially when you're dealing with humans, it's complex. Huh?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask regarding the marketing efforts. What is your demographic? What is your avatar? Huh? What kind of tourists do you want to bring, or what's the community message? And also, what regions of U.S. or global as well? I don't know if you do global efforts as well.
Yeah. So starting with the last question, you know, we have a pretty good ecosystem in Oregon, where Travel Oregon does a lot of the international. They'll be in Europe and Asia, and then Visit Central Oregon, which is our regional destination marketing organization, they do a lot of the direct flight markets. So they'll be in Denver and Phoenix and LA and potentially even Chicago when that flight was happening. And then our real focus is Seattle, Portland, Bay Area, what we refer to as sort of an 8-hour tire radius. Roughly 80% of our visitors travel here by car, so we tend to focus on that 8-hour tire radius.
Locally.
Yeah, and then when you talk about demographics, we really hone in on, you know, 26 to 44-year-old females who have 2 kids in the household, you know, income over $150,000 as a household is probably our biggest demographic. And then outside of that, in the shoulder season, winter months, you get into empty nesters. So those are going to be 55 plus, have an affinity for travel. And then also what we refer to as adventure couples, which are couples who chose not to have kids. And so they can come and mountain bike during non-school season, or, you know, during the school year, et cetera. So those are our 3 primary demographics that we go after, really that family crowd. It's amazing to me, but moms tend to be the travel planners. And so honing in on those guys, and then, you know, the other side of those more empty nester, more mobile travelers.
I wanted to ask, now that it came up with me, are you also focusing on the Latino community, or like Spanish-speaking people, or other languages as well, maybe Chinese or recent?
We don't, you know, it's interesting, when you look at the data, there's not a whole lot of like the Asian market right now.
It's growing.
It's growing. And so that's where we sort of, again, lean on Travel Oregon, and they do some of that international stuff, but most certainly on the Latino side. And again, I would say we're not there yet, but there is a big effort to transition our website and our social media and a lot of our communications into dual language, where you can read it in English and Spanish, and just trying to be more inclusive. And again, it's a shortcoming of ours right now, but is something we're working on, and I think, again, when you talk about some of those markets we're marketing in, we recognize there's a big Latino community in those places, and how do we speak to them in a way that resonates with them? It's a learning process, which is we've reiterated that numerous times in this conversation, but it's something that we recognize, and it's a demographic that we want to pay attention to, and need to.
Yes, because I've recently talked with several Latino community owners of small businesses, and the thing is that they all say the same thing. I asked them why is Central Oregon such an attractive place, and it's obviously the natural landscape. Right?
Yep.
But they really don't have like the notion or what spots are the best to visit, or they don't have the time as well.
Yep.
So it's good that you also consider that, so that you can prepare that Latino community, which is growing as well.
Yep.
It's becoming a significant part of Central Oregon.
Yeah.
So those are ideas that can definitely help you guys grow, and also, like you said, include the whole community.
There's a really cool group at the national level called the Latino Access Foundation.
I haven't heard of them.
Yeah, and they're really trying to make sure, again, from a recreation and an outdoor recreation standpoint, there's accessibility and for the Latino community, and that's a group we've tried to work with to understand how to support them and get them outside and make them feel comfortable outside. And there's also a group locally, Xavier Borja, who works at the City of Bend, is also part of Vamonos Outdoors.
I've heard, yes.
Yeah, and so they do the same thing where they run a lot of camps and get the community outside. So it's really, again, we want to be part of that conversation and make sure those communities feel safe. There has been some negative history in the past, especially around racial diversity in our community and outdoor recreation. And so, again, as an organization, we feel compelled to do our best to try to make people feel more welcome when they visit here. And again, that's just work we sort of take on every day, and we hope it's reflected in our marketing.
Yes, it's like you said, it's a tough balance, but unfortunately, mistakes have to be calibrated. You have to calibrate against those. So I wanted to ask you one last question, and I really again appreciate your time. What is one message that you want to give to the people that are seeing, especially the people who are like the tourism planners, are coordinating cities or even states or nations? To try and do their best and to manage all the things that encompass tourism, which is a lot.
I think the message would be we have to open our eyes and our minds to the scope of work we're actually accountable for. And that means working with more local organizations who may be on the conservation side of preserving our natural resources. It may be with social justice organizations who are working to become more welcoming. It's inviting residents to the table to make sure that those residents feel like they're part of the conversation about how the industry plays out. And that takes more work and it takes more time. But that is what every destination marketing organization is being asked to do today. And it doesn't matter if you're mature or you are an up-and-coming destination. Doing that legwork to engage with the community and not just silo yourself into listening to what a hotel may need or what a restaurant may need, but listen to the employees of that business, listen to the resident who's lived here for 20 years and has felt that change, and be open to their opinions, and then fight for whatever you think that future needs to be, because it is. I mean, things are changing, whether it's climate, whether it's growth, whether it's the accessibility to live in new places. We have to embed ourselves in conversations we used to stay out of. That's the only way these industries stay a very viable and positive part of the growth of a community. And if we don't, you're going to see more restrictions, you're going to see more things come down that make travel and tourism more difficult. And as I started with, we are a nomadic people, and we love to travel, and we need to respect that opportunity.
Of course, it's a great thing that you're doing, managing everything, and always focusing on locals is what makes the essence of your destination. So, Kevney, I really appreciate your time, man. It's an honor to get to be with people who are actually doing what the industry is. And if people wanted to know a little bit about Bend or know about this community and what its efforts are doing, how can they contact, or how can they reach out to you directly? Or What
Yeah.
websites or what contact emails?
I mean, just like this conversation, my email is Kevney, Kevney, at visitbend.com. The website's visitbend.com. My door is always open. I love this conversation, and this is a global conversation, and I love nothing more than talking to communities who are maybe having these discussions and are trying to figure out what that playbook looks like. So, door's always open. I love this conversation. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure, and thank you for watching as well. And I'll see you on the next video.